Hi, and welcome to the second episode of Creativity and Compliance. This is a video series that presents Canadian cannabis products, producers, and store brands to a lawyer and marketing experts to get their thoughts on each from a branding and legal trademark perspective. By analyzing creativity and compliance, we'll provide two different viewpoints on the strength of brand, marketing, and messaging to consumers. So, my name is Colin Bambury. I'm the founder and editor in chief at ADCANN, and I'm going to let the other panelists for today introduce themselves.
Hi, thanks, Colin. I'm Chad Finkelstein. I'm a partner with the law firm of Dale and Lessmann LLP in Toronto. I'm a registered trademark agent and chair of our law firm's cannabis practice group.
Thanks, Chad.
Right, and I'm Hilary, and this is Leah. And we're the creative directors at Sister Merci, an advertising agency that specializes in cannabis branding and anything that kind of goes along with that. I'm sort of the design half, if you will, and Leah, copywriter half.
Okay, perfect. So today we're going to be taking a look at four different brands. The first two will be recreational cannabis brands from licensed producers, and the last two will be recreational cannabis storefront brands. So the first one we're going to be looking at is Papa's Herb, which is a very recently launched brand. They kind of made a little bit of controversy and some noise on social media recently. At the moment, I believe they just have products in Ontario. They also have products in the USA, mostly in the California market. The parent company here is actually very iffy. We've tried doing research here at AdCan to figure it out, and actually a few companies nobody seems to want to take permission for this brand. So Tilray has some credits for it. If you look at Tilray and Papa's Herb, you can find some things. If you search up Origin House or Liberty Health, you can find all these partnerships with Papa's Herb. But we actually posted on our social media that this brand was launching and associated with these brands. And two out of the three actually reached out to us to let us know that, hey, this is not us. We're not bringing this brand to Canada. So it's actually kind of a mystery who the parent company is at the moment. Maybe so we'll be able to solve this mystery after this episode comes out. But at the moment, I believe they just have bulk dried flower products in Ontario. So we're just going to be taking a look at maybe some of the compliance stuff around the name, and then also taking a look at a little bit of their marketing and assessing that as well. So I'll let Chad kind of jump in here first and see what your thoughts
Sure.
are.
Sure. Thanks, Colin. I guess the first thing that I'll mention is from a trademark legal perspective. The most important thing that any trademark can have to stand out and have a good scope of protection and enforcement is being distinct. And these words, Papa's Herb and obviously the logo are extremely distinct. There's a lot that is distinguishable about it. And so if anybody else was using something that is similar, I think the scope of rights to enforce against that third party would be reasonably strong. So from a trademark perspective, I think they're in good standing. From a compliance perspective, it's another story. The Cannabis Act prohibits cannabis from promoting itself by way of depicting a person or a character. I mean, how is this anything other than
Right.
a person or a character? So compliance either took a back seat, or nobody cared, or they just wanted to make some sort of splash initially, and they'll just sort out the rebrand later. But I'm not even sure. We always try to find defensible positions for our clients in their marketing. I mean, this speaks for itself.
For sure. And before we move on, I just want to note the System Institute has any comments just on the logo or the name before we even take a look at the rest of their marketing. Um, yeah,
I think Chad covered it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would be like, well, we wouldn't come up with this because we know the Canadian cannabis laws very well. Obviously, they're much more lax in the USA. And I think that thought kind of trickles into the rest of it. It's just very clear that not much effort has been taken to try and convert this into a Canadian compliant cannabis brand. I think the illustrations are fun.
Yeah. It just kind of feels,
But-
you can go to the next slide. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just feels kind of force fitted to the Canadian market, I think. It just they just picked it up and put a .ca for their website, and they're like, we're done. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
in terms of compliance, that's one thing. In terms of messaging, that's another thing. In terms of whatever you choose to depict on your website, that's another thing. So
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out too, that they didn't create a separate website for Canada or anything. As after they launched in the country, they just added a tab on their website there
Yeah.
in the product. So they are advertising their products in Canada using this website with these depictions. And yeah, this was just kind of these give me Ignite vibes. I don't understand the connection fully to the Papa's Herb branding and then the women as well, but
Yeah,
I
we
just
don't either.
sounds
Well,
okay.
yeah, our brand, Papa's Herb, represents our family lineage and history behind this glorious plant. So I guess that those must be like their family members in the photo. That's
I would assume so, I guess.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it does very seem like it's just a kind of a brand targeted at the US market, and I totally agree. They didn't really do a whole lot to make it Canadian fit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to an. I just want this is just some of the social media and how it was presented. So on their main Papa's Herb page, which is the American page, they just said Papa's Herb is now landed in Canada. They posted some pictures making the CN Tower into kind of a cannabis nug. But yeah, that was just on their main page. You can see here, which is born in Miami, made in California. It's still all American focused, but obviously
Yeah.
they are here in Canada.
And Toronto is Canada. Like there's no other country.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a great point. Every picture, yeah. They don't even mention Ontario or anything.
No.
It just says hitting stores across. It says hitting stores across Toronto. Actually, is what it says there. In
Oh,
the
there you go.
description.
Yes.
They
Further
don't even
down.
say Ontario, but like obviously everyone in Ontario can purchase from them. So that is pretty funny. And they actually have exactly 420 likes on this picture when I screenshot it. Sorry, I just realized it right now.
Oh my
Nice.
gosh, that's funny. Wow.
All right. We'll move on to the next brand. So the next brand is San Rafael 71, which is a pretty well-known brand here in Canada since it's been around since October 2018, like when legalization first happened. Maybe even before that, they were introducing it at trade shows. The parent company is Aurora, one of the biggest cannabis parent companies in the world. And yeah, they're kind of all across Canada. I believe they're in almost every province. They have dried flower, edibles, vapes, pre-rolls, concentrate products as well. And yeah, I'm gonna let Chad kind of talk about the name there.
Sure. So, I think it's from a distinctiveness perspective, it's great, and it's certainly capable of standing out. Um, there is a unique feature of the Canadian Trademarks Act, which says that you cannot own a trademark that is descriptive of the geographic origins of the product or deceptively misdescriptive of where it comes from. So the Canadian Intellectual Property Office will, and they're really uneven and inconsistent with how they choose to enforce it. But if you reference a geographic place in your trademark, chances are you're going to get cited by CIPO by saying that either the trademark that you've chosen is descriptive of geographic origin and not allowed, or if you respond and say, "Oh no, but I'm not from that area. My product's not from that area," they'll say, "Oh well, then it's deceptively misdescriptive to the public of where it comes from." Now, this particular trademark has been registered with CIPO. Others in cannabis that reference geographic locations have not been so fortunate. In fact, this is all matter of public record. If you search on the CIPO database and look up Tokyo Smoke, you'll find a whole history of being held up by CIPO on the basis that it's deceptively misdescriptive of coming from Tokyo. So there's some inherent limitations anytime you choose a trademark that is primarily describing the place where it may have come from or is supposed to have been represented as coming.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's a great example of one as well. So we'll take a look at the marketing now and let the Sister Mercy team jump in.
I think when we both looked at this for the first time, we just kind of said, "Sure." Like we get it. It's West Coast 70s. It's
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
at first glance, like the brand, it looks good. Like there's a consistent look and feel throughout everything, but it doesn't really go much deeper than that sort of like West Coast retro theme. And even like this is a perfect example here. I'll I guess speak to it. This like reference they make to new formats.
Well, yeah, like for me personally, I love music. So when I saw this when it was like vinyl to cassettes, it took me a minute, and I was like, "Oh, you're speaking about like, it being on the go, but like the degradation of quality of audio between vinyl to cassettes." So you're kind of, I was just kind of like, "Ooh," and maybe that's just me being pedantic, and we should just focus on it being like easy to use. It's this like, it's this on the go format. But when I saw that, I was like, "So you're downgrading the quality," and then I was like, "Oh, I get it. But
Yeah, I think
No, that's a good
yeah.
point.
Um, yeah, and then in their social, or maybe yeah, in their social, like again, like things look good, but even if you like take a deeper look at the type of content they're posting. There's like a lot of giveaways, which obviously that's good engagement, but what else can the brand be doing to engage consumers other than just contests and giveaways? I'm sure there's a lot more that they could be doing.
Yeah, like contests are fun, but you can't really rely on that to grow your brand all the time. So I think it's kind of almost time for that like 2.0 portion of this, where it's like, okay, we've done the retro thing, we've done this. How do we evolve this in a way that's consistent with where we've been and where we want to go?
Agreed. Okay. And now we are going to look at some recreational cannabis storefront brands. So the first one we're going to take a look at is Choom, which is owned by Choom Holdings. It's a publicly traded company. They have stores in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, with most of their stores, I believe, in Ontario as a base. So I'm just going to let Chad kind of talk about the name there and some of the trademark compliance issues. Or,
Yeah, from a trademark legal perspective, this is a perfect trademark. It is certainly capable of standing out. I mean, I don't think so. The strongest trademark protection is afforded to made up words because those are the most distinct. I don't think Choom is a made up word. I think if you go on their website, it describes the origin, and I think it's a I forget what language it derives from, but I think is translates to or suggestive of like getting together in the Pacific Islands or something. Um, uh, but as far as a trademark goes and distinctiveness and standing out, scope of enforcement and protection, it is very distinct. If anybody else tried to use a trademark that was similar to this, Choom would be able to enforce their rights against them, which means that they can maintain a pretty strong stronghold for the brand and the brand positioning. So I think it's great.
amazing. And we'll just take a look kind of the storefront design there and some of the branding and stuff. As you can see, it's very kind of surfing focused and yeah, West Coast vibes here as well. To get
Yeah, I think with this store, obviously, like it's a lovely looking store, but I think that kind of goes back to our point that we made, I think in the previous episode, where a lot of stores are just like they're they just try to look good and like what is the thing that will draw me there if I don't live near Choom, like why am I going to go there beyond maybe my first visit just to check it out? What would bring me back? Um, we're not really sure, and we're not really even sure, even when you go to the next page there, when they speak about the origins of the name of the Choom and it's these friends on a Hawaiian island, like we really don't know where the Hawaiian roots come from. Like we're not even sure, like, are they Hawaiian or was it just like a holiday to Hawaii that like inspired, this love for the Hawaiian culture, and that's like why we and cannabis somehow like they partook in cannabis there, and so when they came home to Canada and were able to like create a licensed retailer, this is just what they ran with because they just have a personal love for it. But what's the connection? Yeah, for the consumer, that's kind of what's missing for us. And I think everything like actually like looks good. Like everything looks professional, everything looks clean, like but there's no like meat to it. There's nothing to kind of dive a bit deeper with and like actually kind of make the brand memorable and be a place that is like sought out to buy from.
Yeah, like in terms of like a big brand idea or a big brand story, like if this is the brand story here, the Choom Gang, like that doesn't really do enough explaining in my opinion. And then in terms of like a brand idea, like you can't just say Hawaii is a brand idea. Like
Yeah.
it's going to go a bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, like this is the social feed there is nice. It's just a little bit generic. It's kind of like an elevated Tommy Bahama look almost. Like
Yeah, it's just like
for sure.
what does any of this mean? Like it's just yeah, sure, it's like the whole like Hawaiian like beach vibes, which obviously like, you can maybe equate that to the feeling you get when you use cannabis, but there's yeah, it's just like what beyond that.
For sure.
Kind of what we
They
want.
have a
We want more from the
they
brand,
have
really.
a they have a brand story, but they really don't have any reasoning why it's authentic to them or why it's relevant
Yeah.
to the consumer. I totally agree with that for sure. I think a lot of the things could be expanded upon, like the Choom gang and those kind of things, and Choom culture, and like kind of expanding upon them and explaining, yeah, why they've brought this to Canada, all those things. There's kind of the beginnings of a band, but
Mm.
I completely agree with everything you said. They need to expand upon it a little bit more for sure. And then we'll take a look at a brand that's pretty interesting to me as well. This will be Prairie Records, which is also a cannabis retail store. The parent company is Decibel, formerly called Westleaf. They also own the licensed producer Quest and a few other entities in the cannabis space. The stores are mostly based in Alberta, with some locations in Saskatchewan as well. So I'll just kind of let Chad talk about the name Prairie Records and maybe the concept as well a little bit.
Yeah, I actually have a hard time separating the trademark from the brand in this one because this is I think the coolest one that's out there.
For
It's
sure.
just, I mean, it's just so unequivocally cool. The prairies have never sounded better. From a trademark legal perspective, the word prairie can't be owned by anybody. If someone else out there, wanted to brand their product or their store, prairie something, Prairie Records would have a hard time trying to claim exclusive use over the word prairie. So really, the operative elements of this trademark is the word records, and obviously there's thematic elements to music that are incorporated into that. And to that end, I think that the word records is capable of being suggestive of a cannabis experience, though not descriptive of it. So I think that it's really really able to stand out as a trademark. It's got just a ton of distinctiveness, and I think is as near perfect I think a trademark as you can come up with.
Amazing. It's definitely a very unique concept for sure. So yeah, we can take a look at the the storefront design and the branding now for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that we're really excited about. I think like the idea of comparing like shopping for cannabis to shopping for like that perfect record is a really interesting idea. I mean, I haven't personally been to one of the stores, but my understanding is that that sort of is the experience actually, is like you are able to browse these strains the same way you would browse records. So it's a lovely concept. We wonder if it's like all that practical because I know a lot of these retailers carry about like 400 different SKUs. So, um, but I guess it's sort of the same as if you go to a record shop. You might browse or you might go to the front desk and ask for help, right? So I'm curious to know how many people actually like browse versus, actually going just straight to the bud tender and asking for what they want. But yeah, it's a really lovely concept. Obviously, that it leans into a really beautiful space as well. A similar note, I think when you look at the website or when you look at the social media, the record and like kind of music aspect doesn't always like trickle through into everything. So from like a marketing and branding perspective, we would love to just see that follow through. And that maybe means like, in terms of the website, spending a bit more money to like have some sort of functionality where you can kind of experience cannabis the same way you would music or something. And then, in terms of social, just like leaning more into that music. It's not in this deck, but our team was talking about how I think it was early on when the brand launched, they had some ads that actually used like the records in place
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, the sister, like in terms of like the Sister Mercy team, it was one of the first compliant Google ads
That
that we've
pushed us,
seen because
yeah.
there was no mention of cannabis in it,
But
which is quite interesting.
but they were using like the record artwork, so it was interesting um, angle at it. But yeah, really like beautiful aesthetic for the brand. Yeah, I think just like kind of as we mentioned with some of the other brands, just like a little more follow through, I think would make it even more successful, especially as they open more locations.
Yeah, I'd like if this was in Ontario, I'd be very, very interested to go see
Yeah,
what they offer. So
same.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think it's a really great concept. And I'm just going to add a really quick note as someone who used to work at a licensed producer. It is kind of hard for them to scale with every stream because they actually do reach out for the licensed producer and ask them to design these cards and give them all the information. So a lot of the LPs don't have big teams, and especially as a lot of the craft producers come on board, they don't necessarily have creative teams that can make super aesthetically pleasing records that will fit into the shop. So there is kind of a little bit of a scaling problem there as they're bringing in more products potentially. But I think that the concept itself is super interesting, and I hope
Yeah.
that they expand to more markets so that I can check one out, or maybe hopefully I can travel to the prairies sometime soon.
Yeah.
Something that I did want to point out really quick too. They do a little bit of music stuff like the playlist and stuff, and then recently they did launch a wax product under their own brand that they sell. It's like a house wax
Oh,
concentrate brand. I just think it's interesting to point out as a lot of retailers start launching their own in-house brands and kind of white labeling a lot of things. Prairie Records, I think, is the first one I've seen actually launch a dabbable concentrate in-house. I just thought that was yeah, worthy of mentioning for sure.
That's wicked.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues as more retail stores kind of bring their own brands in house and
Yeah.
Got a lot to say about that. That's probably a session for another day.
well, we'll keep all those insights.
Yes, yes, that's going to happen, and yes, I would imagine that there's a bit of a patchwork of regulations across each province about what kind of private label brands are permitted. I suspect we'll see a
Right.
reconciliation of those regulations, and you'll see a lot more of it.
Amazing. Well, stay tuned for more information like this. Thank you so much for tuning into Creativity and Compliance, and thank you so much to the System Merci team and Chad as well for participating. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.